Good Monday. This is Jay Brew, co-chairman of Seafreedom Brew. When I was recently talking at the Sheshanoff CEO affiliation meeting that I did on capital planning, the thing that we talked about is that as community bankers, as directors, that we need to have predictive type indexes that tell us what the economy is going to do, not just now, but in the future. And we need that in order that we can plan. And so we come back again to looking at the Fed coincident indexes that are produced at Fed Philadelphia. And we go back to December's 3-month change index. And many of you remember as we were moving through the fourth quarter that the Fed being so pessimistic in here. And yet, based upon what we were seeing in using this index, is that we were actually sitting there looking at the economy. The green is growth, dark green is a higher level of growth, pink, slight decline, break even with the gray. And the thing we looked at with the red, we had 2 red states, 3 red states actually with Rhode Island, this little one right here. But looking at it is that we were looking across the nation and saying that we felt that we were going to have somewhere around a 3% GDP, when the Fed in their own predictions was looking more down in that 2% area. So interestingly enough, that's what we got on the most recent revision, was that 3% number. When we look at it, let's look at now going to the January. And we can see that we have no red states, including Rhode Island, and we have more darker green states, only 1 state showing no growth in here. So that would indicate to us that once again, looking at, based upon this change, is that we should see 3% plus GDP. Now, the question would be, is that what effect are gasoline prices going to have? And we've talked about this in prior webcasts, that most likely with the rise up in gas, we're looking at probably a net negative 1% on GDP. But this time it's harder to tell because of the strength of the underlying economy. It's harder to tell with the warmth that we've had this winter that did not take money out of people's pockets for heating costs. So it's a little bit harder to tell the normal what the full impact will be. But of course there will be an impact because, as Dr. Ed says, rising energy prices are a tax on people, takes money out of their pocket, and at the same time does no good for our economy because a lot of that money goes overseas. So when we look at it, this is a positive sign, though, on the overall economy. It's predictive. But the other predictive index that we use from Fed Philly is that 6-month forecast. And the thing that we've talked about before is that the next 6 months, when we look across the nation, that we see, once again, mostly green. Blue now would be growth in excess of 4.5%. No red states except Rhode Island. And within that is that we're looking at what we feel is, once again, probably now more like 4% or higher growth. So when we think about that, is that then this was December. We now go and look at the 6-month forecast for January, and you can see just how dramatic this is in terms of turning dark green. This is excellent news. Once again, let's go back to looking at this at 4% type growth. Could this mean that we're more in the 5% growth category, even with energy prices up, maybe more like 4%? And the point that I keep making is that where we looked at the highest levels of unemployment in here, being on the West Coast and the southeast now turning dark green. Very good sign for unemployment still continuing to decline. So looking at this, once again, predictive. Thinking of this kind of economic growth in here is really pretty incredible. Maybe with the Fed turning a little bit more of being more positive on the economy, but this would suggest that Main Street is moving forward. And when we think about that, is that then go and think about the Fed projection in here, which will get a new revision in April, but on GDP, that the Fed is expecting 2.2% to 2.7%. Interestingly enough, looking at the Bloomberg survey of the top economists out there, the average growth that they're talking about is 2.2%. So away from the noise with the Fed, with how the street is anticipating things, is that as community bankers, we have a predictive index that looks out into the future, that saw the economic change coming, that then brought us to the point where we can look at strategically over the next 6 months and probably longer as having a very solid economy that once again is back in not only a recovery mode, but could very well be a growth mode. This is Jay Brew, co-chairman of Seafried and Brew. Have a great week.